There are moments in life when the pain feels unfair and the betrayal feels unbearable. Yet deep inside those moments there is a purpose you cannot see and a strength you have not discovered. Sometimes God allows people to hurt you, not to break you, but to build you into someone who walks with clarity, conviction, and unshakable faith. This message reminds you that every wound has a direction, every tear has a meaning, and every trial is shaping you into who God called you to become. When God allows people to hurt you, it is never because He wants to see you broken, but because He wants to show you who you truly are. Pain has a way of stripping away the noise of the world until only your real strength remains. In those moments when you feel abandoned, you start to discover a courage that was hidden deep inside you, waiting for the right moment to rise. You begin to see that the fire you feared is the same fire that shapes you into someone unshakable. God uses the hurt to make sure you see the power He placed within you long before the struggle came. What felt like weakness becomes the doorway to the strength you never realized you carried. There are times when you look at your own life and wonder why the attack came from people you trusted and loved. But it is in that shock and disappointment that your faith begins to grow in a way comfort never allowed. You start to lean on God more than people because the wound forces you to seek a strength the world cannot give. You begin to rise with a new sense of clarity because pain clears the vision in ways peace never can. The hurt teaches you that your identity does not come from how others treat you, but from what God placed in you. As you walk through the fire, you slowly realize that you were always stronger than the opinions that tried to break you. The pain becomes the testimony that your spirit can endure far more than your fears ever admitted. There are seasons when the hurt feels like it is too much, and you wonder if God truly knows how heavy your heart has become. Yet even in those silent moments, He is working to turn your weakness into a story of victory. Every tear becomes a seed planted in the ground of your destiny, and every trial becomes a lesson preparing you for a greater calling. You begin to rise not because the pain disappears, but because God is lifting you from within. Strength grows quietly inside your soul, and before you know it, you are standing taller than the storm that tried to bury you. The hurt becomes the training ground where your spiritual muscles are built day by day, and with each step you learn that victory is born in the places where you once felt defeated. With time, you start to understand that God did not allow the hurt to destroy you, but to reveal what He always knew about you. You were created to endure, you were created to rise, and you were created to walk through fire without losing the purpose God placed in your heart. Pain becomes the teacher that forces you to see what comfort kept hidden for too long. It shows you that your strength is not an accident, but a divine design. Every moment of hurt becomes a reminder that you are being shaped for something greater than anything you lost. And this is why you will rise again. There are moments when the betrayal cuts so deep that you cannot understand why God allowed it to happen. But with time you begin to see that it was never a punishment. It was a lesson meant to open your eyes. The pain teaches you to stop giving your trust to everyone who smiles at you and to start listening to the quiet voice of God within you. You learn to pause before believing and to watch the actions of people more than their words. What felt like cruelty becomes clarity, and what felt like loss becomes protection. God uses betrayal to show you that not everyone belongs in the journey He designed for you. When someone hurts you, it becomes a mirror that reveals the truth about their heart and the truth about your own growth. You learn who values you, who respects you, and who was only there for their own advantage. The betrayal becomes the turning point where you step out of blindness and walk into wisdom. It teaches you to stop depending on people for validation and to anchor your worth in the presence of God. Slowly, you begin to see that the wound was not meant to destroy you, but to wake you up. You rise with sharper vision and a wiser spirit. There comes a moment when you realize the betrayal pushed you closer to God than comfort ever could. The disappointment forces you to seek guidance from the one who never changes and never abandons. You begin to pray with a different kind of honesty, and you learn to trust with a different kind of strength. The hurt shapes your discernment until you can recognize danger behind a kind smile and manipulation behind gentle words. God allowed the betrayal so you would stop walking blindly and start moving with spiritual awareness. You become stronger not in hardness but in understanding. In the end, you understand that the betrayal was a chapter, not the final story. God used it to lift you out of places you outgrew and to free you from people who could not walk into your future. What you thought was the worst moment became the doorway to a wiser and more confident version of yourself. You carry the lesson not with bitterness, but with strength, because now you see the purpose behind the pain. Every wound has shaped your character, every tear has sharpened your vision, and every disappointment has prepared you for something greater. And this is why you will rise with wisdom. There are seasons in life when the ending feels sudden, and the pain feels unfair, and you wonder why God allowed such hurt to close a chapter you were not ready to release. But with time you begin to understand that some doors will never close unless God Himself allows the discomfort to push you forward. The hurt becomes the signal that your spirit has stayed in a place that can no longer support your growth. What feels like loss becomes divine redirection, guiding you toward a path you never would have chosen on your own. God uses painful endings to shift your steps away from what limits you and toward what strengthens you. The very moment you thought was breaking you was actually moving you. When someone walks away or when a relationship collapses, it often feels like the ground has been pulled from beneath you. But hidden within that collapse is the hand of God removing what would have delayed your purpose. You may not see it in the beginning, but the separation becomes a preparation. The silence you fear becomes the space where God begins to speak clearer. The ending forces you to focus on the places where you are being called rather than the places where you were comfortable. Pain becomes the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. What seemed like rejection becomes protection. There comes a moment when you realize that if the door had remained open, you would have stayed in a chapter that was too small for your destiny. God allows the hurt to shift your heart and to redirect your mind so you can step into a greater calling. You begin to recognize that every ending carries a message and every heartbreak carries a lesson. The pain teaches you that growth does not always feel gentle, and transformation does not always begin with joy. Sometimes it begins with loss and confusion and tears. Yet in that painful beginning, God is already preparing something new. You rise with a new understanding that not all endings are meant to be mourned. With time, your spirit grows stronger and your vision grows clearer, and you begin to understand why God allowed certain people to leave. They were part of your story, but not part of your destiny. Their presence would have held you back from the strength and purpose that God intended for your future. Painful endings teach you to trust the direction of God even when the path feels uncertain. They teach you to walk by faith and not by emotion. They teach you that every closed door is guiding you toward a promise that is waiting on the other side. And this is why you will rise into your next season. In the end, every wound, every betrayal, and every painful ending becomes a piece of the path God prepared for your growth. What felt like an attack was shaping your spirit. and what felt like loss was guiding your steps toward a greater purpose. God never allowed the hurt to destroy you, but to refine you into someone stronger, wiser, and closer to Him. You were not abandoned in the fire, you were shaped in it. And now you rise not as someone who survived pain, but as someone who has been transformed by it.